You are listening to Sports After Dark with your host, Dustin Hoffman, and co-host Tanner Westerholt with Colin Miller doing the sports update. We're going to start the show talking about Husker football. Nebraska came off the 42-24 win against Rutgers, and they looked pretty dominating, but also very spotty at certain spots. Tanner, what do you think was the most disappointing thing of the game, or impressive?
Well, there were lots of disappointment there, especially Mitchell's bonehead play, which I'm pretty sure is going to be in the Sports Center not top 10. I still don't know who he's throwing to. He's just lucky we recovered that little lateral. But other than that, take out Abdullah, and it was like a subpar performance on part of Nebraska. They still came out with a win. Abdullah still broke records, same with Kenny Bell. All in all, it's a win. They're now 7-1, and now they're just focusing on Purdue.
Matt, you cover the Nebraska women's basketball team as a play-by-play announcer. What are your thoughts of the upcoming season that the women's are looking forward to start in the next week?
I get that question a lot, and a lot of people are concerned about losing a player of a great magnitude that Jordan Hooper was. But I really think that this has a potential of being a really great season for this team, especially with the core returning group of 4 starters off a Big Ten championship from last year. And don't forget, Connie Yorrie has brought in the 9th-ranked recruiting class in the country. I think Emily Cady is going to have a dynamic senior season. I think Rachel Terrio has emerged as one of the top point guards in the country. So I really think this team has a chance to make a run at another conference title and a pretty significant run in the NCAA tournament this year.
Connie Yorrie has big shoes to fill with the loss of Jordan Hooper. Who has the best chance of filling those shoes?
I don't really think you replace Jordan Hooper as much as you play differently. And what I mean is, Hooper averaged 20 points and 10 rebounds. You're not going to find anybody along those lines to just come in and play that role. But what you can do is ask Emily Cady to contribute more points. And you can ask someone along the lines of Anya Kalenta, who's a junior college transfer, to come in and get you 6 to 8 rebounds a game, or Allie Havers to increase her role as a forward to get more rebounds. I think you're going to see Rachel Terrio also increase her scoring. So, every year the beauty of college basketball is you do have stars who leave due to graduation, and teams play differently, and I think that you're going to see those points replaced by the team kind of absorbing those into players' point averages instead of just trying to replace what Hooper does, because Hooper, a player of Hooper's magnitude only comes along once every 10 to 20 years.
You said Connie Yorrie just signed the 9th-ranked recruiting class in the country. What do you think is the secret to the recent success she's had on the recruiting trail?
There's a lot of things that build upon each other. I think one thing that helps Nebraska out tremendously is the Big Ten Network. If you are Rachel Terrio's parents in Ohio, you can watch every one of her games. If you're Natalie Romeo's parents in Central California, you can always watch one of her games. The second thing that's happened is sustained success. The Huskers are consistently a top 20 program. They've been to 2 Sweet 16s in the last 5 years. They've been a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. The next thing that happens is they've got the best facilities in the country. The Hendricks Center is unmatched. And then the Pinnacle Bank Arena is just the cherry on top. When you bring a recruit into Lincoln now, and you show them the Hendricks Center, and then they come to a Husker football game, and then they go to the Pinnacle Bank Arena, there's not another team in the country that can match that. So sustained success, great facilities, marketability, tremendous opportunity to watch your daughter play anywhere in the country with the Big Ten Network and all the games being available have all helped Connie Yorrie have great success recruiting.
With the recent success the women's basketball team has had, have you seen an increase in the attendance that usually go out to watch the Nebraska women's?
It's been great. In fact, yesterday, Jeff Breach, my longtime broadcast partner, and I were just in shock that we had almost 5,000 people for an exhibition game, which is unheard of. 10 years ago, a crowd of 5,000 for a regular season game at the Devaney Center would have been a great crowd. Season ticket sales are at an all-time high. You know, the attendance speaks for itself. You can see that at the Pinnacle Bank Arena. You know, schools are able to report attendance in different ways. Nebraska reports actual attendance. You'll see a school like Purdue report 7,000 people at a game when there were maybe 2,000. They can count seat licenses bought in a package for gymnastics, swimming and diving, and track and field. So you have to take attendance with a grain of salt in women's basketball, but what happens is the eye test. Every team that comes in from around the league just basically stands and stares at the Pinnacle Bank Arena, and they say, you all have the best attendance in the league. And I think that showed during the NCAA regional that Nebraska hosted last year when the Huskers weren't even there, and then they had the most well-attended regional. So the attendance has certainly been very, very impressive, especially since Nebraska moved into the Pinnacle Bank Arena.
Who do you think gives Nebraska the toughest challenge in this upcoming Big Ten? What Big Ten school?
Well, you know, they're going to play 18 games instead of 16, and the reason for that is Maryland and Rutgers have joined the league. Now, it probably didn't have as big an impact on football this year, but certainly will on women's basketball. Maryland went to the Final Four last year. They are a perennial power under Brenda Fries, who used to be the coach of Minnesota, so she's very familiar with the Big Ten. And Maryland returns a pretty good core of people. So Maryland's picked to win the league, and rightly they should. They are going to be a tall task. I also think that Rutgers cannot be overlooked. Last year they won the Women's NIT postseason tournament. They return a Hall of Fame coach in Vivian Stringer, who was the longtime coach at Iowa. So she's very familiar with the Big Ten. They have 5 starters back, and they play a very tough defensive style. Don't overlook Michigan State. They've got a lot of players back. They're very highly ranked. So I think those are the teams on Nebraska's Big Ten schedule that Nebraska will really have to look out for. The Maryland game at the Pinnacle Bank Arena, the first Saturday in January, is going to be nationally televised on CBS, and then the game at Maryland in College Park will be nationally televised on ESPN. So those will be 2 marquee matchups in the Big Ten for the Huskers this year.
Yeah, you were talking about the big games Huskers have to play in the Big Ten, but they also have a huge non-conference game against Duke. How excited are you to watch a powerhouse team like Duke come to PBA?
Oh, it's great, and I think that's one of the great things about being in the Big Ten now is every year there's the Big Ten ACC Challenge. Already the Huskers have went to North Carolina and played the Tar Heels. They played Florida State in this. Actually played Maryland the first year in the Big Ten and the Big Ten ACC Challenge. And Joanne P. McCauley has taken a Duke program when she took over for Gail Gestenkors and just kept that running. You know, she's very famous for playing the matchup zone. And, you know, they're a little light in the guards this year. You're going to see Duke come in trying to figure out some problems with numbers at the guard, but they've got a junior in Elizabeth Williams who's going to be one of the most dynamic centers in the country, long and lean, and she can defend out to the three-point line and recover to the basket, a shot blocker. Going to be very difficult to deal with. But, you know, that's certainly going to be a big game for the fans. It's going to be a good RPI game and a good measuring stick for the Huskers. And, you know, for a women's basketball fan like I am, that'll be the game of the night in women's basketball. And I'm excited that I get to watch it, much less describe it on the radio.
Yeah, you've been the women's basketball play-by-play person for quite a while. What type of stuff do you have to go through to prepare yourself for an upcoming game?
You know, I get that question sometimes. I think people think that there's a block of time I use before each game, and certainly there is. But really, John Madden talked about this with the NFL, that he's really just adding a couple of drops of liquid to a almost full glass every game. I'm preparing 365 days a year. I have so many friends throughout the world of women's basketball. I I set up a lot of Google News alerts that come into my email, and I'm reading stuff literally all day about women's basketball. I talk to friends. I talk to other coaches. I read. And, I love doing it. I don't think you can do that unless you really had a genuine interest in the sport. So, how much time does it take me to prepare? I'm preparing all the time. But it's been a lifelong hobby of mine, and even if I wasn't doing women's basketball on the radio, I'd still be watching it very, very closely.
You also have the best catchphrase out of all Nebraska athletics. Where did you come up with the ideas of your catchphrase?
It started as a joke, and this is one of the great stories. My best friend Don West and I used to be the radio team for Missouri State women's basketball, and we had a player who tied the NCAA record by hitting 11 three-pointers in the game. And on the last one, he said, "Can she get another one? You betcha." And I always try on every broadcast, if I know a friend of mine's listening, to have a catchphrase or a word or something that no one else will know, but that one person will, and that when I say it, they know I'm basically secretly talking to them. And Don was listening one night in Missouri, and I dropped "You betcha" for a three-point call, knowing he'd know it. And my son Nate said to me, "Dad, you need to stay with that." And next thing I know, there were signs at the Devaney Center, and they were putting it on T-shirts, and it really just started as an homage to my best friend, Don West. I had no idea it was going to explode like this. It's become very associated with the program. I think it's the greatest thing in the world, but certainly there was never any intent on my part to consciously change that into what it's become.
What got you so involved into women's basketball?
Back in 1985, when I was a college sophomore at Missouri State, I was on the stat crew as a sports information student. I also was a sports director at the local TV station doing local sports, high school, football, basketball, Division II football, college basketball on TV. And our women's basketball team was going to get their games on radio. First school in the old Gateway Conference to get their entire schedule on the radio, and they invited me to do it. The school was very familiar with me as a student. The coaching staff very familiar with me on the stat crew. And I had, even at the age of 19, many years' experience at that point doing play-by-play. So I was somewhat well-known in the community. So it really started. I was invited to do the games in 1985, and I was been on stat crew there for 2 years, so I've been with women's basketball since the first year it went Division I in 1983. So, I think it's just one of those things. I never really had an intention at the beginning to be a women's basketball announcer, but through time, that's where all my friends are. It's where all my contacts are. I've been around the game so long, so it just sort of evolved. But, people here in Nebraska don't remember all the myriad of high school basketball and football and baseball games I did on TV and radio in Southwest Missouri that kind of led Missouri State to offer me that play-by-play job back in the day.
Well, I want to thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, Matt. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Hey, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Out of those three stars you named, you forgot Haley Sample. She's not a scorer or a rebounder. She's the everyday, most fundamental person. She'll know where to go on the court at what time. She does things for the team that you don't see on the stat board, but most teams need that type of player to help them succeed win the big, tough games. So she's also one person to look out. And I'm curious about what these freshmen are going to do when they come in, because Connie Yori is bringing in the 9th-ranked recruiting class. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. We're back on Sports After Dark on KRNU2. I'm Tanner Westerholt with Colin Miller and Dustin Hoffman. There was a big turnout on Saturday for football games, especially your Florida Gators upsetting Georgia. As a Florida fan, how does that make you feel that they actually upset a top 15 team?
It's the first time I've been proud to be a Florida fan since week 1, actually. I did not give them any hope to come in and win that game. But, gotta credit the players there. The offensive line just thoroughly dominated Georgia. Came in with the 11th ranked defense, just giving out just over 100 yards a game, and Florida comes in, runs the ball 60 times, more than 400 yards. Matt Jones, Kelvin Taylor, over 190 yards each, and it's not going to save Muschamp's job, just the one win, but he lives to fight another week, and the players certainly responded. Now the biggest problem is they're playing with expectations now, and that hasn't been the Muschamp's strongest suit. So they play at Vanderbilt this weekend, who, let's be honest, isn't very good. So 7-4 is a very realistic possibility now, and if you had told me that last week, I would have called you crazy. But it was a good weekend to be a Florida fan. But elsewhere in the SEC, we got Auburn, Ole Miss, and Ole Miss just losing in one of the most heartbreaking fashions. Laquan Treadwell fumbling on the half-inch line after getting his ankle broken, gruesome injury, and it's just really unfortunate. But Auburn, they keep finding ways to win. I mean, shades of last year.
Ole Miss did score with a minute 30, and I believe Auburn did have a few timeouts left. I'm pretty sure they would have been able to drive down the field and kick a game-winning, game-tying field goal or got the game-winning touchdown.
Yeah, I agree there. I mean, they were moving the ball at will in the second half, put up over 250 yards rushing. And Nick Marshall just clutch throw after clutch throw. I mean, 3rd and longs, and he's completing 40-yard passes down the field. It's just, they just respond every time.
This weekend will be a huge playoff thing because this weekend alone we have Michigan State versus Ohio State, and we also have Kansas State versus TCU in the Big 12. That is 2 matchups of possibly 2 top 10 teams, 4 top 10 teams. So after this weekend, the playoff committee will have something to think about after this weekend. So who do you have in those 2 games?
Before I get to my prediction, I think all Big 12 fans, if they want to see their team in the playoff, they should be rooting hard for TCU, because there's no way Kansas State's getting in over Auburn.
I'm pretty sure Ohio State will face the same problems Nebraska did. But then again, Ohio State does have a center that can snap the ball correctly and get to the quarterback. So,
well, that is if Michigan State players aren't clapping, supposedly.